Hello and welcome back to Pixel Street Videos. Today, me and Will are continuing our countdown to infinite. If you haven't checked it out already, we just finished Halo Reach. We did it all in one sitting, just about a few breaks in the middle, but it took us about 6 hours overall. And today we're just going to review it. We're going to do a quick 10-minute review here, just kind of reevaluating the game as a whole, just because we're kind of going back to it after so long. I mean, I've played Reach multiple times since it came out. I don't know when's the last time you played through Reach?
Played through? Oh gosh,
Was it
it's.
when it got added to MCC?
I think when they added it to MCC, I went through just to get some initial achievements, but it wasn't for the story by any means. It was more just, hey, let's just blow through this because hey, it's new, it's here, why not? Let's see how it
Yeah.
runs in 60 FPS or what? Well, they didn't really add the 60 FPS until um. No, they did have a 1X update. I
I
want to
don't
say
know.
before.
I don't know if it was 60 FPS. It
Because
might have been.
they came out with it on PC, and I think when it came out on PC, they did update it a little bit on the console.
Yeah, and then the Series X, I think you can play at 120 hertz, can't you?
Yes, that
So
one you
so yeah.
can.
So the this is so confusing. The Xbox One X enhancement for the game was 60 FPS, but
Hmm.
now on the Series X you can play at 120 hertz.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think it's multiplayer in
Yeah,
120, but
not
campaign in
campaign.
60.
Which
I think it's
doesn't make
because of how
sense.
they did the cinematics. Well, I mean, general cinematics are usually filmed, or at least when you're talking movies, in 24 frames per second, which is obviously significantly
Less.
less than what you see an average video game for. So
Yeah.
they bring it up to 60 without it feeling too well, like what a lot of people I work with, they call it the soap opera effect, where
Yeah.
everything just seems a little too smooth. It doesn't look quite right. So they didn't want to take away from the cinematic quality,
It almost looks
but
cartoony.
exactly, yeah. But yeah, honestly, you said we finished it in about 6 hours. I would argue
Yeah.
five because we were dicking
Mm,
around in New Alexandria trying to get
oh
the
yeah, that's
Pelicans there for a
true.
little bit.
Pelicans. We took a few breaks. I'd
Mm,
say 5.5 hours is a safe bet to say we
that's
beat it
safe,
in.
yeah.
That's excluding all breaks we took and all that. But yeah, overall, I'm glad that we got through it in one sitting. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we got through the halfway point about 2.5 hours in, and I was honestly expecting that to take a little bit longer. And that's when we were like, should we just keep going?
Yeah.
Like, we're making really good time. And then that's when we started taking breaks and messing around trying to get the Pelican on
Hey,
Legendary
and we did
and
get the
hijacking
Pelican.
Banshees and getting other achievements. And then your console crashed at the
Oh,
end of the last
oh my
level, so we had to redo
gosh.
that
Yeah.
entirely.
So the very end of the
Um,
game, we're literally I wouldn't say seconds, maybe minutes, like 2 minutes from the end of the game, getting to the end cutscene, and my console crashed. And in doing so, we had to replay the entire last mission from the
And I think it's
beginning.
because they uh, track checkpoints differently when you do the playlist version
Yeah,
instead of
probably.
just going through the missions one at a time, kind of like how Halo Wars was. But although Halo Wars doesn't really have checkpoints, if you fail, you got to start over again anyway.
Yeah.
Um, but that's good to know going forward, especially for um, some of the upcoming Halo games that have those much longer missions. Like Halo 2's missions, at some points get really long.
Yeah.
So we may have to take a console breather and let them cool down for a little bit because we were running them quite hard at
Oh yeah.
highest resolution possible, 60
Exactly.
FPS for 6 hours straight.
Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think the story holds up. I like the story of that game a lot. I don't know why John. So John joined us. He did not like the story for whatever reason. He never has liked the game. I don't know why. But I think it's a cool story. It's kind of just like, well, I mean, if you didn't, we're gonna go into spoilers in all these reviews. If you haven't played these games by now, like, what are you doing? They're old games. Um, but yeah, it's
Reach
basically
came out 11 years ago now,
yeah.
so they've had time.
It's basically just a suicide mission from
Mhm.
like the halfway point on, wouldn't you say?
Just about. I mean, when they start realizing, especially after spoiler, George dies,
Yeah.
and the entire Covenant armada shows up at the planet, they're like, shit.
Yeah.
And they
For
go on the
reference,
defensive at that point.
For reference, George dies thinking he saved the entire planet, and he
Mm.
did not. In fact, he barely did anything. We find out.
Yeah, destroyed one ship, which at
Yeah.
the time was the ship supplying the entire Covenant force that was on Reach. So in his mind, he got it.
So quick
But
story recap. You play as Noble Six, which is just like it's just the Spartan you are. You don't really know much about him. The beginning teases like, oh, you got a shady past, but we're gonna not talk about that. It's like, what did he actually do? You know what I mean? Like, I want to know. But
he, from what I gathered from the extended lore, is that he was, well, very much a lone wolf. He went off, he did his own things. He was Oni Black Ops, and a lot of his stuff was redacted. Like, you can't go back and find it again because of how secretive and how secret agenty it was that he did. But with the lack of Spartans out there, especially the Spartan 3s, because they were made much after the fact, after the, like, basically the Master Chief Spartan 2s. So they brought him in to be a part of Noble Team, who lost their recent Noble Six, and that's it. That's all, at least all I
yeah.
know. I didn't go too far into many of the novels, and I don't know if any of them really followed him, because he was supposed to be like Master Chief, a blank slate for you yourself, the gamer, to imprint yourself on. Like,
Yeah.
I am Noble Six, or I am the Master Chief. So,
But yeah, basically you start doing missions with them, and then eventually you meet up with Doctor Halsey to
mhm.
retrieve what you find out is Cortana, right? And
Yep.
you have to deliver Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn, and then that's basically the whole objective of the second half of the game,
Mm-hmm.
more or
Yeah,
less,
it's
right? Like that's the story in a nutshell.
just about. I mean, the whole marketing they had for Reach back in 2010 was, from the beginning, you know, the end. I
Yeah,
mean, by that time, a lot of people have already played Halo 1, so we know from that and from the books at the time, we know where the story is. I mean, there was a book called The Fall of Reach before Halo Reach even came
yeah.
out, and they took from that inspiration. And they did change a couple of things around. I know they did go back at one point and rewrite parts of Fall of Reach to include June there at the end, being a surviving Spartan alongside Halsey there at the very end. But all in all, we kind of already knew going into it that everybody here was going to die. We had a fairly good assumption that that was going to happen. And for the most part is what happened.
Yeah, so you were saying one of the Noble Six dies or lives, right?
Yeah,
Is that what you
June,
said?
the sniper, he
Okay.
escorts Halsey off world.
Oh, is that right?
And
Is that right
that's
after we get Cortana
mhm.
that he does
Right
that?
after we
Okay.
get Cortana, it was just June, Emil, Carter, and Noble Six. And
June took her.
Carter tells June to accompany her and keep her safe. And shortly
That's the
after that,
last
Carter
we.
gets shot through the cockpit and
Yeah.
then suicides into a scarab. So it's just you and Emil.
That's one of the things I liked about this game. Like replaying it is it kind of humanizes these Spartans, right?
Yeah.
In a sense that it's like they're not invincible like you are when you play the Master Chief. The Master Chief's not
Hmm.
gonna die. You know, I mean, and if he did, it'd be a huge deal. You know, if he ends up dying in Halo Infinite, but I don't see that happening until they establish a good enough replacement.
Yeah, and I think if anything, Halo Infinite is going to be not necessarily an apology for them trying to shift away from the Master Chief, but they don't want to make the same mistake again, because Halo 5 trying to gear towards Locke, I think originally they were thinking that he was going to be the one that
I
carries the
think
mantle of
so.
Chief. And
That
obviously
backfired.
the community did not like that idea at
That
all.
backfired so badly on them, man.
Especially with all the stuff from the Bungie days where they say, you know, Spartans never die; they're just missing in action.
Yeah,
With that mentality, if you were to kill off the Master Chief in a game, you're automatically backtracking from the original lore,
yeah.
and I think they're starting to realize that.
But yeah, I think this story really humanizes these Spartans.
Yes.
John put it very well. George is easily the most like humanized Spartan in any of the
Hmm.
games, just because like he legitimately cares about people, and you can see that. Like
Which is
the
odd though,
woman.
because he's a Spartan too, just along the side of Master Chief, and those
Yeah,
were the ones that were kidnapped as children,
yeah,
and I mean they had their humanity taken from them. So
exactly.
it's cool to see one of those have human qualities.
Yeah, and it's also funny. So you see how humanized he is when they find that woman, right? Who's like
Hmm.
terrified because the Covenant just like stormed through there, um, and she like doesn't want to talk to them because obviously like why would she?
Hmm.
She's fucking terrified, and he like wants to help her out, and like nobody else really seems to give a shit. So you see
Right.
that there, and then you see when you meet up with Doctor Halsey, and he's like, "Oh, hey, mom,"
Hmm.
and like you get,
Oh, so weird thing. He's actually saying "ma'am."
"Oh, ma'am,
So I
really?"
turned on the subtitles one day and it's "ma'am," but that's how some British dialects say "ma'am." They say "mom."
Oh,
It's
weird.
for the longest time I actually thought he was saying
Well,
"mom," like
which
the
would make
Spartan
sense, right?
Twos. Yeah,
Yeah,
like this. She was the mother of the Spartan Twos, more or less. So
exactly.
for the
Yeah,
longest time in my head canon, I could have swore he was saying "mom," but
that's what I
he's
was
actually
saying.
saying "ma'am." It's
That's what I
weird.
thought, and wow, that changes everything. Because in my head, I was like, all right, some shit
Hmm.
happened. Like George was really close to Doctor Halsey compared to like the rest of the Spartans, the
Hmm.
Spartan twos anyway. Man, that's really
It's
weird.
it fucked with my head canon for sure. Like no, 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 because exactly what you said. Like the Spartan Twos viewed her as a mother figure because
Yeah,
obviously they were kids, they were kidnapped. But I mean, it's also possible that they do view her that way. It's just not them calling her mom. I don't know, but the subtitles actually say "ma'am." It blew my mind when I first found that out, and that was
weird.
years after I had played Reach for the first time that I found that out. I don't know why I had
Really,
subtitles on, but
really weird.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't know. Graphics they hold up pretty well for this game for the time.
they
To
they
be
really
fair,
do.
it is enhanced with the Series X and
Yeah,
S. So
the higher
it,
resolutions and the better loading times of the textures. I do remember back on the 360 when certain things just wouldn't load in right away. They'd be really flat textures, and then boom, they'd pop in.
yeah,
But
like pop in, pop out stuff. Yeah,
mhm, the art style, though, you're correct. It does hold up, and I think that's just the Bungie charm, like the little flair that they added in for their games. I I don't know. I
the
can't
one
explain it very well.
the one thing I never cared for in Reach were the armor abilities. Never cared
Yeah,
for them at all. Like you're telling me the Spartan can only sprint for 5 seconds, like
yeah. That
in
didn't make any sense.
well, the whole time we played, the only one I wanted was the sprint because I just
Hmm.
like being able to run, and take cover. I don't want fucking armor lock, which sometimes can take like 5 seconds just to punch the ground, and you just
Right.
get killed while you're trying to do it. I don't know. I think Halo 5 did a really good job at managing Spartan abilities. Just
I
having
think they did
everybody
too. I
have everybody on the
personally
same
not a
like
fan.
playing field.
Yeah, well, personally, I'm not a fan of like the excessive amount of the enhanced movement that's become a huge craze for a lot of modern games. Games are running faster, so we want our characters to physically be able to run faster. Like I get it. Um, it's a fine balance, and I know the transition from well Halo 3 and Halo 3 ODST, which was running on the same engine with roughly the same sandbox, going to Halo Reach. They had the equipment in Halo 3, they had the armor abilities in Halo Reach. They wanted a progression in there in some way. Whether they hit the mark that they were wanting to or not, I still think they did a good job. I I don't understand like what you said, like the Spartan only being able to sprint for 5 seconds. That makes
Yeah.
no sense. Like,
I mean, I get it because they probably made
mhm,
the decision to put these abilities in there to kind of like differentiate this game from any other Halo in a way.
yeah,
Every game has its different like pros and cons to it, right? Different like
hmm,
I don't know, different features that the Spartans can take advantage of.
yeah. They always tweak the
And
sandbox, and that is never going
and
to not change. They're
and
they're
the, and
always going to consistently change it.
and them making the Spartan sprint for only that long is probably their way of balancing those abilities for like the multiplayer and stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
So
if
they
you could
they were
sprint,
probably thinking specifically for multiplayer,
yeah,
but well, if it's available there, it has to be available in the campaign because the sandbox needs to
mm-hmm.
match. We can't have two completely different sandboxes. So I think you're right on that. it's finding that good balance point between story and gameplay. Like how can we make both line up and be symbiotic without one taking away from the other? It's like I could never be a game developer because these are hard decisions I would not be able to make.
Yeah. Well, Will, here comes the question. What would you give this game out of 10 based on this last playthrough?
Story, I would probably give the story, and John would probably disagree with me. I would give the story about a 7. Specifically because there's not much content for like a beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah,
It
I agree.
doesn't follow a good natural story arc. It was really meant to be a prequel. Here are the events leading to Halo 1. Literally, the beginning of Halo
Yeah.
1 is the end of Halo Reach. Like, how
Which
do
is
we get there?
really cool, really cool.
Yeah. Honestly, the very last mission is when it hit me early, like first time playing it, when you hear the choir start to sing similar Halo-ish tunes, and you see the Pillar of
Yeah.
Autumn in the background, and as soon as Captain Keyes comes over the comms, like I got goosebumps that first time playing it through. Every now and then I get goosebumps because he's just got that
I
iconic
I forget
captain voice.
I forget what the line was, but at one point he's like he says something along the lines of like, we literally will not leave until you get here.
Hmm.
Like you have to be like, there's no like their mission is to just sit there as long as it takes, even if they start fucking dying,
Right?
until
Like,
they get there with
you are
Cortana.
expendable. This AI is not.
Yeah, exactly.
So story, I would give the story about a 7. Like the writing is good, the setting is good. There's just not
I
a lot of
think
character progression and
yeah.
not a natural arc.
Yeah,
Uh,
so that's my thing with the story. I was gonna give it like
Mhm.
a 7.5 for the story, but I think that there just isn't enough character progression there. Like
yeah,
yeah, like all these Spartans in your squad are dying, but like I don't really care about them. You know what I mean? Like not to sound harsh, but like they haven't
yeah.
given me a reason to care about these people.
Like we're
Like
here, each one has a specialty.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah. Will we beat this game in 5.5 to 6 hours,
Hmm.
and somebody died 2 hours in. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like how am I supposed to care about that guy? Like
exactly.
like it just wasn't a long enough game for me to get invested in these characters.
Right. At least Game of Thrones gave us like 3 or 4 episodes before they killed off someone important, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, story, I'd say about a 7. Gameplay, 9.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
the only reason I'm not giving it a 10 is because of some of that funkiness with the armor abilities
Yeah, the
and things
abilities,
like
man.
everything else. Even with the hardware issues I was having, like I don't know what happened between playing the previous game and this. Maybe it was just the Xbox getting a little too warm after 6 hours of playing, but I had some input lag, so my trigger pulls were not lining up with it actually
Yeah,
happening on screen,
that's really
which is
strange. I
weird.
I don't know why that was happening.
But even with all that happening, the game is fun as hell. And
It
that's
is.
what, in the end, that's what I look for. Did I enjoy playing it? And I always enjoy playing Reach. I really do. And out of all of the other games that they've put out, Halo Reach felt most mechanically like Halo 1, just with a bunch of extra stuff in there. Like you didn't jump as high as you can for Halo 3. In Halo 2 and Halo 3, your normal walking, obviously there wasn't sprint in those games, but your normal walking was at a faster pace than what you were for normal walking in Halo Reach. Um, which was similar to how Halo 1 was. You were meant to feel clunky. You were a tank, a human tank. You were supposed to feel like it. And I feel they really went back to that for Halo Reach, which I loved.
Yep. Well, this has been the review. Are we gonna settle at like an 8 out of 10 as our score overall?
Yeah,
Right,
I'd say
right in the
about an
middle.
8, man. Yeah.
Yep. Well, this has been our review of Halo Reach. We're gonna jump into Halo 1 in the coming weeks here. We might take a few weeks off, but we will be back with some
E3 is
more
this, well,
next weekend.
a week and a half? Yeah, oh no,
Next
yeah.
weekend.
Next
A
weekend.
week
Dang.
from when this
What
video
day is it?
posts.
Saturday. No,
It's
Friday.
Friday.
Tomorrow's Saturday. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I need sleep.
But yeah, and I'm sure we'll be right back here. Will, we'd love to have you talk about the Xbox conference because we're probably gonna have a lot of Halo information coming out then.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
But yeah, this has been our review of Halo Reach. As always, like, share, subscribe to the video. Let us know what you think of Halo Reach. Do you think it's a good game, bad game? Like John hates this game, and I don't understand it. But yeah, if you want to watch Will's perspective of the game, go to twitch.tv/thepianoman23. He's been saving all of his videos there as highlights, so you can watch his perspective as we play through. Yeah, we'll catch you in the next video.
Take it easy.
Cool.